I'm wonderful. You see, I'm staying in the Swiss mountain. The place is called Interlaken. It's plenty of sunshine, and the mountains are still full with snow.
Oh, wow. I've had the pleasure of being there, as you know, Erich, for the TV interview. First of all, you're very welcome to the show. Great to hear your voice again, Erich. Really is.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you.
You know, I guess we'll start off, Erich, when I seen you in Interlaken, a beautiful part of the world you're in. I got the invite to go to Sindelfingen in Stuttgart for the conference. We made the effort to get down there. What a wonderful international presence there, Erich. I mean, what an outcome. You must be so happy with the outcome of the conference in Stuttgart.
Well, in the meantime, I'm 80 years old, but I'm still functioning. My brain is functioning, and I'm very happy. It looks as if the gods love me, and not only the gods. In Sindelfingen, Germany, there were nearly 3,000 people, and I was very, very happy to receive finally a standing ovation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that you did, Erich, that you did. Great turnout for the speakers, too. I mean, there was a lot of people there that were ancient alien hypothesis. And then there were people there like Hancock maybe took a different stance. But it was great to have those mix of everybody there, Erich.
Of course. And I mean, finally, we had Professor Dr. Chandra Vikram Singh. You see, he's an astrophysicist at the University of, somewhere in England.
Cardiff, I mean.
Yeah, and he's a brilliant man. You know, some years ago, we all learned in school that life on Earth all started with atoms connecting in the primary atoms connecting themselves to molecules and so on. And now Professor Dr. Vikram Singh clearly stated this is not true anymore. Life on Earth has come from outside. The first information came from outside. We're not born on this planet. This makes sense because in every of the old holy writings, it states the gods created humans according their own image. So we are the offsprings of another solar system.
Erich, why do we see such an interest in extraterrestrials today? Whether they're ancient alien crowd or whether it's modern ufology, or why such an interest now? Is the time right for this?
That's one thing. The time is ripe. You see, we change. In Germany, we have a word. It's called Zeitgeist. In English, we say spirit of time. So the spirit of time has changed. The situation is not anymore the same now as 40, 50 years ago or as 100 years ago. You see, 100 years ago, when a brilliant professor, a linguist, for example, translated an old writing, and in this old writing you read something about flying into the sky, coming together with God, angels coming down from the sky. So it was all translated in a religious manner. In the meantime, because of the change of time, we translate it in a different manner. For example, take the word angel. What is an angel? Well, an angel is a being, a messenger, has come down from the sky. So in ancient times, we said angel is a helper of God, of the almighty, wonderful God. In the meantime, we can say angel, that's an extraterrestrial. And the archangel is the leader of an extraterrestrial. Or we have humans which have been taken up to heaven. Heaven means, in religions, thinking, well, going in the place where God lives, being united with God. In the meantime, we can translate heaven into space, and it makes more sense. So because of the spirit of the time, the old translations become a new sense.
For sure, Erich, for sure. How does this fit in with Darwinism? Is this in conflict with Darwinism? Is there some sort of a mix together?
No, it's not the conflict. But it's very complicated to explain it for me because my English is not the best, at least in this matter. You see, the information of life comes from outside. That means the starting point has come from outside. The program, so to say, has come from outside. And soon as this starting program started, the rest is evolution. So Darwin is okay. We are the product of evolution. But evolution has some unchangeable forms. You see, evolution can create practically everything, all kinds of animals and forms and whatever. But at the same time, evolution has unchangeable forms. What is an unchangeable form? For example, we all know the dolphins. Dolphins are intelligent animals, Now the dolphins are jumping out of the water, and they see little lights up in the sky, our stars.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's assume the dolphins were a scientific society. So they swim together, and they ask themselves the question, what are these lights up there? And they came to the question, is there maybe another planet? Are these other suns? Someday they want to know it clearly, scientifically, not only just a guess or a speculation. So sooner or later, they have to construct an antenna. To construct an antenna, that means they have to melt iron. To melt iron, you need fire. To make fire, you have to go out of the water. So this is an unchangeable form. Animals who live in the water will never construct or invent a computer. These are unchangeable forms. So that does not contradict evolution. Evolution creates everything. Maybe out there in other worlds there are something like flying elephants. I don't know. But there are also humans or human-like beings because we are the offsprings of another solar system.
Mm. Wow. Erich, I know you interpret these texts, these ancient texts, Erich, and there's fundamentalist religions out there that, they interpret it a different way. Are we saying these guys are uneducated, these guys are wrong, these guys can't get it together? I mean, unfortunately, by you interpreting your texts your way, Erich, these guys are being put, are we putting these guys down? Are they just,
Just yesterday evening, I had a speech and a conference at the Swiss University in Fribourg. Fribourg is a city here in Switzerland. It's, so to say, a university city, a city full of students. And I had my discussion at the Faculty of Theology. So full around these guys, which look everything with yesterday's eyes. We had a wonderful discussion. They said, well, Erich, you look at it different, and it makes obviously sense. Now it is a question of time again. Which sense is more reasonable? In 10 years, will we look it with Erich's eyes, the translations? Will we look it with the eyes from outer space, the eyes with extraterrestrials? Or will we look it with the conservative eyes, with yesterday's translations? Now for myself, I am very, very positive. I believe the situation will change. We have finally no alternative. We will look at the old translations with new eyes, because sooner or later these extraterrestrials will return. Then we have them here, and it would be better for mankind to be prepared for such an event.
Wow, that's nice that you can do that at a theological institution, Erich. Do you think there's more respect for what you do today? Because when Erich von Daniken released Chariots of the Gods, there was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of problems with the, either religious communities or historians. Is there more respect today, Erich?
Of course. You see, Chariots of the Gods, I wrote nearly 50 years ago, and Chariots of the Gods was really a provocation. It was a shock. And most of the critics did not realize that in Chariots of the Gods, I had 253 question marks. So I was asking mainly questions. They all said, well, Erich von Daniken said. Well, I asked the question, that's correct, but in a form of question mark. Mm. Now, in the beginning, also, I was young, 50 years ago. In the meantime, 50 years ago, you are not self-critical. You believe everything which somebody tells you, etc. So, and of course, as a young man, you make some errors. And I made my errors in Chariots of the Gods. Later you learn. You become a little cleverer, but you will never repeat the same errors. So everything is perfect. The situation has changed. Not only the time has changed, also Erich von Daniken has changed, and the critics have changed. We look into a new perspective now.
For sure, Erich. And Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods is still selling off the shelf, Erich. It's still selling today. Do you know how many copies have sold to date?
Well, altogether I have published now 37 titles. And the total edition of the 37 title is about 66 million copies worldwide. But this in more than 30 translations.
That's incredible, Erich. That's incredible. Do you get a sense of satisfaction from that?
A certain satisfaction, yes, because I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to realize that my brain functions and that I can still discuss. So it is a certain satisfaction. And on the other hand, I have become a little, well, cooler and you know, not aggressive anymore. So I love to discuss with my critics.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls for the moment, because I know you're passionate about these, Erich, and everybody that I talk about these, you know, there seems to be nobody talking about these Dead Sea Scrolls. I think these are the most exciting documents or ancient texts that have surfaced in I think they're just incredible, Erich. I mean, why is the community...
There are some texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls which nobody knows, only a few specialists. For example, one of these Dead Sea Scrolls, they were found nearly 50 years ago, is called the Lamech Scroll. What for heaven is the Lamech Scroll? Well, it's a story about a man, his name was Lamech. And according to the Dead Sea Scroll, Lamech was a rich shepherd. He was around with his sheep, and after some months, he came back to his home tent. And he found there a newborn baby. And Lamech's wife, her name was Batenosh. And Lamech said to Batenosh, "This can't be my child. It's impossible. The boy looks completely different than the other children, and because of time, I was away now more than 4 months. This is not possible that this is my child." But Batenosh, the wife, she started swearing that nobody touched her sexually. She even says, "I swear you, dear father, Lamech, no shepherd touched me, no guardian, no watchman, nobody." But still, there is the boy. So Lamech goes to his own father, which is the biblical Methuselah, and tells him the story about this boy and his family. Methuselah himself doesn't know what to do and goes to his father, which means now the grandfather of Lamech. And this father of Methuselah is nobody than Enoch, the biblical prophet Enoch, which disappears in a fiery chariot into heaven or into space. And Enoch says to his son Methuselah, "Go back to your son Lamech. Tell him that the guardians of the sky have inseminated the woman, Batenosh, without touching her sexually. Lamech should accept this boy as his own. And because the guardians of the sky have decided to destroy the old mankind by a gigantic flood. But this boy should be the survivor and the father of mankind after the flood." So according to this Lamech scroll, we all are descendants of this boy. In biblical terms, the boy's name was Noah.
Wow, incredible, Erich. Incredible stuff. On manuscripts, I know you wrote about the Voynich manuscript. History is wrong. You wrote about the Voynich manuscript. Perhaps for those listeners out there that don't know what the Voynich manuscript is, could you tell us a little bit about it and where it came from?
Nobody knows what it is. Finally, the Voynich manuscript is a manuscript which a man, his name was Voynich. He bought in a convent in Italy, and the Voynich manuscript is full of pictures and full of writings. But nobody understands nothing, not even the picture, not even the writings. Still today, we don't have a translation of the Voynich manuscript. In the meantime, the original Voynich manuscript is part of the Bodleian library. Mm-hmm. But there is nothing to say what's written in the Voynich manuscript because no one can translate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think, it contains some information, mysterious, ancient aliens? Do you think there's something in there that's tangible?
Yes, because of the pictures.
The pictures tell it.
Again, I have to come back to Enoch, which I just mentioned before. Mm-hmm. Enoch, this prophet of the Old Testament, he himself is also the writer of a book. It's called the Book of Enoch. Mm-hmm. The Book of Enoch is not part of the Bible. The Book of Enoch was found in an old library some 170 years ago in Ethiopia. Now, Enoch describes that the teachers from heaven, in my eyes, the extraterrestrials, they told him about our solar system. They told him about our calendar, that the Earth surrounds the Sun in 365 days, plus some hours. Because we have every 4 years a leap year. Mm-hmm. So All this is described in the book of Enoch. Now, coming back to the Voynich manuscript, according to some pictures, it looks as if he would describe exactly the same what Enoch described, because you see on some pictures that the earth surrounds the sun, and then you see some figures which you cannot correctly translate, but it could have the same meaning as 350 days around the sun, plus some hours of this leak days. It makes a certain sense, but it's not proven.
Wow. Do you think that the Book of Enoch could be a spin-off from the? Do you think that this? It's hard to put this question now. Do you think that the Voynich manuscript then is being used in conjunction with the Book of Enoch? The source material for the Voynich manuscript was the Book of Enoch then? That's
my idea, yes. Yeah. At least part of it, at least the astronomical part of it. The Book of Enoch was the source, and somebody made a mixture out of it in an unknown language with not understandable pictures. That's my idea. You see, Enoch, he writes in the original book in the first person. That means the I version. I did, I heard, I was. And he describes that when he was 12 years old, so he was a boy, two heavenly figures descended from the sky, and they took him up. And finally, Enoch learned the language of these extraterrestrials. And they teach him, not only in astronomy, they teach him in different fields. Enoch writes more than 300 books. And before he disappears in a fiery chariot with the extraterrestrials, he gives his 300 books to his son, Methuselah, with the order, keep these writings of your father Enoch for the generations after the great flood. So that's only one part of the story. In the meantime, we know that in the Great Pyramid in Egypt, there are much more rooms and shafts than we knew before. We know this because of modern, radar, which can cross the stones. Now, ancient Arabian writers, for example, Ibrahim Abdul al-Masudi, they say the Great Pyramid was not constructed by the pharaoh of Cheops, how archaeologists think, but it was constructed before the Great Flood by a leader. His name was Saurit. And then they said Saurit is the same which the Hebrew community calls Enoch. Now again back. Enoch writes 300 books, gives them to his son Methuselah with the order, keep them for mankind after the Great Flood. Arabian historians say the Great Pyramid was constructed before the Great Flood by Saurit, but Saurit is the same which the Hebrew calls Enoch. And in the meantime, we find more and more shafts and rooms inside the pyramid. So I suggest sooner or later we will find in or under the Great Pyramid some books of Enoch. And that would be for some of our society a catastrophe.
Wow. So Enoch is related to Noah, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enoch is related to Noah. Yeah.
And this is where we also have the Noah and Enoch living long periods of time. Perhaps that's because these guys were on spaceships and relativity, or, it mightn't be that these guys were eternal. It might be actually that they were...
Well, we really don't know. You see, not only the 10 patriarchs before the Great Flood in the Bible, they have extremely high ages, not only. Also the Maya rulers or the Sumerian rulers, the so-called kingdoms in the Sumerian kings list, there you find figures which we cannot understand anymore. Gigantic, they lived for hundreds and thousands of years. We don't know if this is all exaggeration or if it's true. So we have no final answer.
It's incredible that we have the Voynich manuscript with the pictures, and we have the Book of Enoch with the text, and we have the text and the pictures to match each other to talk about this astronomy and the stars. It's incredible. Do you think perhaps that we had the ability to go to the stars ourselves, Erich, in ancient times? I know there's a lot of text to say that we were taking away, or like Enoch was taken up on a craft, but do you think that we had that possibility before in the past?
No. No. We have old Indian writings where they clearly say that the cities in the sky came from outside, not from our solar systems. Out of these cities in the sky came smaller vehicles. The old Indians call these vehicles the Vimanas. Mm-hmm. And there is no tradition of Vimanas constructed on Earth. There is no evolution, technological evolution of Vimanas. On Earth, we never had industries to construct Vimanas or spaceships or whatever. All these flying beings in their flying cities, they came from outside. In Indian literature, we even have discussions where some humans ask these extraterrestrials, where do you come from? No one says, we came from another continent, like, for example, Atlantis. They all say, we came from another solar system. So it was not the human technology. It was technology of extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people think we need the ET factor to make us understand things. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, Erich. We don't really need it, do we?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on and explain everything with yesterday's eyes. They mean everything with evolution, normal, natural evolution, etc. But if you do this, then you ignore the facts. You ignore, for example, the old texts which speak a different language, or you ignore all the sculptures and the paintings on the walls worldwide. Sculptures, for example, on temples, Maya temples, where you see the gods descending from the sky. You see the tombstone of Palenque, where one of them is sitting in there in a kind of machinery, and he uses two hands to manipulate control. He's sitting on a chair like a racing motorcyclist, and outside of his chair a linking flame comes out. So that would mean we ignore all these chiselings. We have to change our opinion. Mm-hmm. Especially, you see, these so-called gods, the extraterrestrials, thousands of years ago, before they disappeared, they promised our forefathers, we will return one day. And I think it makes more sense to take this promise into consideration. Every living religion today believes that their gods come back. For example, I am educated as a Christian. We believe that Jesus Christ will return one day. But the Muslim community believe that their Mahdi will return one day. As we know, the great Jewish community believes that one day their Messiah will return. So every living religion has the belief of the return of someone. And this existed already in the past. Some hundreds and thousands of years ago, the cultures they believed of the return of some of their heavenly beings. And they will return. And therefore, I think it makes more sense. It is reasonable to be prepared for such an event than to be shocked when it happens. Because when we are prepared with this is a global shock, a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, let's go through The Gold of the Gods. That came out in 1972, I believe. It describes the underground cave system in Ecuador. What a worldwide controversy or storm that one caused, Erich. How do you feel about that now and what happens?
Well, of course, I know in the meantime exactly the geographical position. What is this? In the English language, I have published a book, History is Wrong. Yeah. And in this book, History is Wrong, I give the whole story about this metal library, what all happened, all the intrigues and the accusers and etc. And also I give the exact geographical position where this metallic library does exist. I don't have it now in my mind. I don't have the book in front of me. Sure. But you have to read History is Wrong. Anyhow, this metal library does exist, definitely. And it contains unknown writing from an unknown society. Put it on small leaves of metal, like stamps. They are not chiseled. They are pointed into the metal.
Wow. Of course, the gold doesn't decay, so that's going to be the choice of material if you're going to put something like a library for mankind.
Yeah, definitely. And it has to do something with the religion of the Mormons. You see, the Mormons are a wonderful community. They not only live in the United States, the state of Utah, the Mormons, they live worldwide. And according to the Book of Mormon, their ancestors have brought from overseas some metallic libraries to the American continent. And in the beginning, some thousands of years ago, the forefathers of the Mormons always have handed down, they have written what happened to them, their contact with extraterrestrials, etc. And all this is written on metal too. So all these metallic libraries from the deep past has something to do with today's religion of the Mormons.
Wow, incredible. So how did the Crespi collection come into being?
Crespi collection, oh God, I knew him. Father Crespi was an old man, a brilliant man. He was a Jesuit priest, and he lived in Cuenca. Cuenca is a place in the mountain in Ecuador. And because Father Crespi always helped the Indian, he helped them, he had them present, he gave them money, he helped them with taxes, he helped them against the state, etc. And therefore, the Indians brought him present, and they brought him all kinds of sculptures, including metallic tablets. I have photographed in Father Crespi's cellar and in the backyard more than 200 metallic tablets with all kinds of inscriptions and pictures on it, pictures which are not known to our archaeology. By the way, again, some of these pictures are in the book History is Wrong.
History is Wrong. Incredible stuff. And, whatever happened to, I think, did the church seize Crespi's, there's a lot of dispute what happened to the collection of metallic plates, but they were seized by the church, perhaps? Yeah,
you see, Father Crespi died. He still, also, as he's dead, he's still respected very, very much in his community in Cuenca. He died, and the state took over a big part of Crespi's treasure. They are now in the State Bank of Cuenca and some part in the State Bank of Bogota. And there, in the State Bank of Bogota, you have a museum which is called the Gold Museum. The Gold Museum is open for the tourists. I was there many, many times. And now, very new, in the Gold Museum of Bogota, you find some of the metallic tablets which came from Father Crespi's collection. And I hear in Cuenca that the State Bank in Cuenca will do the same thing. Sooner or later, they will open a gold museum in Cuenca, and then we can see again Father Crespi's collection, at least part of it.
Oh, incredible. We're saying there's a link between this gold library, these metallic library, and the Book of Enoch, though. That's correct.
That's correct. You see, it becomes very complicated on the radio.
Sure.
I was talking about the Mormons.
Yeah.
And this oldest, first forefather of the Mormon had the same father as Enoch. You see, Enoch was the seventh patriarch before the Great Flood. The father of Enoch was Jared. Jared, that's at least the German spelling. Jared. So Enoch's father was Jared. But Jared had not only Enoch as a son. Jared had other boys as sons. And one of them was Nephi, the forefather of the Mormons.
Wow, incredible.
So they are connected with family blood.
So these guys left the Middle East a long time ago and went to South America or North America or somewhere out that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. There's talk that the Mormons have been searching for this library for decades now. Is that true? Is that
that's true. Yes, the Mormons were looking always for that library. Now they have the exact geographical location, and I don't know if they were there or not. I would suggest yes, they were there because the Mormon society is quite rich. They are wonderful persons, and they have military help. They have helicopters. So I would think that they have given a lock to this metallic library.
Wow. I guess they're going to get a lot of answers when they get their hands on the library, Erich. I mean, this is everything to these guys. Then this is their own history. This is their own.
Yes,
lineage.
But the question is still: will they publish it or not?
Wow.
Will they go to public or not? Because some of these things are dangerous for our today's religions, for our today's societies. You see, you take for example the Arab society. Most of the Arab community are Muslims, and for the Muslims, extraterrestrials or so-called gods, in reality they are not gods. The humans call them gods. Do not exist. For them, it's a catastrophe if extraterrestrials would appear, or if old writings say that the so-called gods of ancient times were just extraterrestrials. It is absolutely not understandable for the Muslim society. So therefore, it might well be that even if we have some texts, if we have clear writings, that they will not be published to protect the society, the humans.
While we're in South America talking about there, I've got to mention Nazca, because I have been with you, Erich, in the office in Interlaken. I've seen the picture archive that you have, all the photographs. What an incredible, first of all, Erich, what an incredible archive of photographs, and digitally archived now. Maybe just tell us about the digital archive, and maybe we'll talk about Nazca.
Of course. I mean, Nazca is a desert. Nazca is a desert in Peru. It's about 500 kilometers south of the capital city of Lima. If you are on the desert, just with your car or by foot, you see nothing. It's just plain desert with sand and little brown stones. But soon as you fly over the same desert, of a sudden you see big figures shining out of the brown ground. First you see figures of an ape, of monkeys, of spiders, of such kind of animals. Then you fly higher, and then you see gigantic lines, small lines. I mean, the smallest is about 1 meter large only, but it's 23 kilometers long, straight ahead, over hills and mountains. Then you fly higher again, and then you see something beneath you which looks like airstrips. I never said it is an airstrip, but it looks like airstrips from the air. It starts abruptly, it ends abruptly, it is large, up to 65 meters. The largest of these airstrip-like lines are 3.8 kilometers long. So this is what you see from the air. I have in my archive about 5,000 pictures of Nazca, and I nerve myself every time when I see a TV presentation about Nazca. There the scientists, they explain the public that it is very easy to make these lines. You just have to scratch away a little the surface with your shoes, and then a brighter shining surface comes visible, which is true. But this has nothing to do with the so-called airstrip-like lines, because for the airstrip-like lines, whole mountains have been cut up, have been made flat, and you see zigzag lines under these airstrip lines. So it is all an incredible mixture, and the public is not informed about the real mystery of Nazca. This is unnerving me all the time.
Yeah, and I know you've got so many photographs, Erich. What I didn't realize until I get into your work, Erich, was just how many different types of images there are on the landscape. And we only get a few of those in the news. They seem to give us this sanitized version. They only give us a few. They give us this little only a handful. They only give us a handful of these pictures, and we're told there's nothing interesting there. But
yeah, that's true. But that's because they themselves don't know more.
Yeah.
You see some TV makers. They maybe fly over Nazca for one or 2 hours. Then they see a little something. But to know everything about Nazca, you have to fly for days over Nazca. It's tremendously big. And you always have to fly in the early morning because of the sun. Soon as the sun is on the sky, you see nothing anymore because you have to create light and shadow. So these TV makers or some of these archaeologists who speak about Nazca, they have no idea of the real Nazca. They never took themselves time to be there for a week or for a month.
Yeah, of course. The big claim they have is that they're procession routes. I mean,
and that's ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous. Forget it.
Yeah.
You see, procession routes. How should procession routes exist when they start abruptly and end abruptly? Yeah. There is no pathway leading or guiding to the procession routes. No, it's all the ancient explanations really make no sense.
Yeah. Of course, the best way to see them is from the air. Some of them you can't even see until you're in the air.
No, you have to be in the air, definitely. It makes no sense. There are some hills, and on some hills you see small lines pointed to the next hill. But to have an overlook of this whole mystery of Nazca, you have to fly over this desert. There's no other way.
You know, it makes me think, Erich, when I talk to people like you and great research like this. I mean, why is history so goddamn wrong? Why is it so wrong, Erich?
It's always a question of the spirit of time. As we mentioned before, 100 years ago, we had no aircraft. Our professors knew nothing about space travel. So they looked at all these mysteries with their eyes hundreds of years ago. It was another spirit of time. In the meantime, a new spirit of time exists. We know about aircraft. We know about the possibility of spacecraft. We know about changing the genetics, etc. So the situation has changed.
Of course, everybody says, you know, and this is a major problem in ufology, Erich, or ancient alien hypothesis, that people think, oh, if we admit there was an ET presence, or if we admit that there was ancient aliens, well, then that takes away our creativity, or that takes away human ingenuity. And I don't believe that.
That's ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous. You see, it was always the humans who constructed these gigantic buildings, temples, pyramids. It was not the extraterrestrials. They never made their hands dirty. It was always the humans who did it. The question which we have to ask is, why have the humans did it? Why have they constructed gigantic temples or the pyramids? Now, the normal question is, they did it for the gods. Okay, but for which gods? Now, the answer comes, well, from God, for the gods in nature. For example, the lightning, the thundering, the natural people were afraid of an earthquake and whatever. And that's not the answer, because the gods in antiquity, they were talking. They gave information to the earthlings. So it was the gods who guided the humans. It was the so-called gods, I mean the extraterrestrials, in the case of Enoch, who made the planning for the Great Pyramid, the engineering stuff, the planning. But the work itself, the dirty work, it's always the human who made it for the gods.
Wow. Erich, I have to talk about the Little Palenque, King Pikal. I could talk about this all day long. It's such a great talking point because it's just an amazing artifact. Now we have your version, Erich, which is the rocket ship with the flowers, and then the traditional Mayanists, the so-called experts. I mean, they say flowers or something. You know, it seems to be, Erich. They explain this stuff away with silly things, and it's people like yourself give this very logical, technical function that seems to be more believable, Erich.
Well, in the meantime, yes, it is more believable. You see, concerning this Palenque plot, it's a tombstone. We have in the past 14 scientific explanations. The discovery was made in 1952 by the French Mexican archaeologist Professor Dr. Rutz, and he had an explanation for it. In 1952, since 1952, 14 different explanations had followed, always with some new ideas. But in our times, the newest explanations came not from Erich von Daniken. It came from archaeologists. Professor Dr. Stewart is the absolutely world-recognized translator in Maya writing. And in his newest book, he says, the explanation is of this tombstone, there is a figure. The figure's name is Pakal, because we find the name on the plate, it's written down. But Pakal does not fall into the earth. Pakal is rising up into the sky, into space. And on the whole tombstone, every little thing you do, we will see, has to do something with space. So this is the newest translation from Maya specialist, not from Erich von Daniken specialist.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Erich, I know you talked about being younger and people make mistakes or they're very different type of criticism. How are you today? You're still researching the same mysteries. You're still pursuing the same genre. How has your writing style changed? Do you get more open-minded? Do you get more researching? What were you today? You're still writing today, first of all.
Of course, I'm always writing. It's a never-ending story. And I am not alone anymore. You see, we have this wonderful organization called the Ancient Astronaut Society, and there are thousands of people, and some of them are quite academics from different fields and universities, and they're all working and writing me their results, or they are publishing their own books. So the situation really changes. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I am now 80 years old, so I really don't care anymore if I am accused, because I am in the better situation than the others. Yeah. Look, when I write something about Nazca in Peru, or when I write something about Palenque, which we just discussed, I know the scientific literature. I know what the colleagues of the scientific community had to say about this mystery. But on the other side, the academics, they don't know Erich von Daniken's writings. They maybe just heard of Chariots of the Gods, and that's it. They have no idea that I have published 37 books in the meantime. So I am in the better situation. I know more than the other side knows. So to talk with critics, it makes a pleasure for me. Of course, I always learn that every specialist in his field knows much more than Erich von Daniken. For example, when I talk to a professor in Egyptology, I know that this respectful personality knows much more about Egyptology than Erich von Daniken. But on the other hand, Erich von Daniken knows much more about his field than the professor in Egyptology. Mm-hmm. So I am sitting on the right horse, on the winning horse.
Oh, for sure, Erich, for sure.
Listen, I cannot continue. I have to run away. It's 50 minutes past 3.
Okay, no problem, Erich. I really appreciate your time today. We're at the end of the show anyway, so look, you know, Erich, I love what you do. I look forward to the next book. It's been great talking to you.
It is a pleasure to talk with you, and I will be again in California at Joshua Tree. That's far away from your place, I guess.
Part of the world you're in. I got the invite to go to Sindelfingen in Stuttgart for the conference. We made the effort to get down there. What a wonderful international presence there, Erich. I mean, what an outcome. You must be so happy with the outcome of the conference in Stuttgart.
Well, in the meantime, I'm 80 years old, but I'm still functioning. My brain is functioning, and I'm very happy. It looks as if the gods love me, and not only the gods. In Sindelfingen, Germany, there were nearly 3,000 people, and I was very, very happy to receive finally a standing ovation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that you did, Erich, that you did. Great turnout for the speakers, too. I mean, there was a lot of people there that were ancient alien hypothesis. And then there were people there like Hancock maybe took a different stance. But it was great to have those mix of everybody there, Erich.
Of course. And I mean, finally, we had a being, a messenger, has come down from the sky. So in ancient times, we said, angel is a helper of God, of the almighty, wonderful God. In the meantime, we can say angel. That's an extraterrestrial. And the archangel is the leader of an extraterrestrial. Mm. Or we have humans which have been taken up to heaven. Heaven means, in religions, thinking, well, going in the place where God lives, being united with God. In the meantime, we can translate heaven into space. And it makes more sense. So because of the spirit of the time, the old translations become a new sense.
Mm-hmm. For sure, Erich, for sure. How does this fit in with Darwinism? Is this in conflict with Darwinism? Is there some sort of a mix together?
No, it's not the conflict. But it's very complicated to have Professor Dr. Chandra Vikram Singh. You see, he's an astrophysicist at the University of, somewhere in England.
Cardiff,
and he's a brilliant man. You know, Some years ago, we all learned in school that life on Earth all started with atoms, atoms connecting each in the primary atoms connecting themselves to molecules and so on. And now Professor Dr. Vikram Singh clearly stated this is not true anymore. Life on Earth has come from outside. The first information came from outside. We're not born on this planet. This makes sense because in every of the old holy writings, it states the gods created humans according their own image. So we are the offsprings of another solar system.
Erich, why do we see such an interest?
I'm wonderful. You see, I'm staying in the Swiss mountain. The place is called Interlaken. It's plenty of sunshine, and the mountains are still full with snow.
Oh, wow. I've had the pleasure of being there, as you know, Erich, for the TV interview. First of all, you're very welcome to the show. Great to hear your voice again, Erich. Really is.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you.
You know, I guess we'll start off, Erich, when I seen you in Interlaken, beautiful in extraterrestrials today. Whether they're ancient alien crowd or whether it's modern ufology, or why such an interest now? Is the time right for this?
That's one thing. The time is right. You see, we change. In Germany, we have a word. It's called Zeitgeist. In English, we say spirit of time. So the spirit of time has changed. The situation is not anymore the same now as 40, 50 years ago or as 100 years ago. You see, 100 years ago, when a brilliant professor, a linguist, for example, translated an old writing, and in this old writing you read something about flying into the sky, coming together with God, angels coming down from the sky. So it was all translated in a religious manner. In the meantime, because of the change of time, we translate it in a different manner. For example, take the word angel. What is an angel? Well, an angel